welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Today I want to tell you 21 things you should know before going out and getting rats. So to those of you that are keen subscribers of my channel, you'll know I've already filmed this video once in the past, a couple of years ago. That video happens to be my most viewed video ever, and it also happens to be the video that I don't like the most. I don't like the camera angle, I don't like how awkward I am, I don't like my hair. Putting all of that stuff aside, I do think it is still important that video stays up because it does continuously get views and it is possibly helping a lot of people, which is good, but I personally just don't like the video and I really wanted to redo it. Also, that video was about 2 or 3 years ago and I've learned so many things about rats since then that I thought were more important to include in a 20 to 21 things to know before owning rats video that I didn't include in the first video. So we're having a makeover, we're redoing it today, and hopefully this helps some of you if you are thinking of getting rats. So, number 1, rats are social animals and they have to live in groups. It seems like no matter how many times I say this and how much I stress this, there's still people that will think they are the exception and that it's perfectly fine to own a single rat. 99% of the time I'm telling you, this is not okay. I've heard pretty much every excuse under the sun by this point, and it is not okay to house a single rat by themselves. In the wild, rats would live in large social family groups and we have to replicate this in captivity. A single rat living by itself is going to have a reduced quality of life. This can actually lead to things like respiratory infections because if a rat is depressed and stressed, living by itself, this can actually lower their immune system and make them more susceptible to illnesses such as respiratory infections. So please, whatever you do, try everything in your power to make sure your rats are living socially as they're meant to. As I said, I do hear a lot of excuses from people trying to justify why they're housing their rat by themselves. You choosing to do so for your own selfish reasons is not a good enough excuse. If you want to have a better bond with your rat and you're physically choosing just to own one rat, I hate to break it to you, but that is not how things work. That's not going to mean you have a better bond with that rat. I have multiple rats and I have really good bonds with a couple of them especially, so that is definitely not a good enough excuse. Also, if you have a rat that is aggressive towards other rats, please make sure you're trying everything in your power to house them with other rats as they're meant to be, so neutering, spaying aggressive rats. Also make sure you're trying the proper instruction methods with them, and also reach out to more experienced rat owners to try to help you integrate that rat into a group. Don't just give up and house them alone straight away. Also, if your rat has a health issue and you're worried about it passing on to the other rats, please don't ever separate them from their group. Most of the time it's probably already passed on to them anyway, but also housing that rat by itself, that can actually make the health issues so much worse due to stress, so please don't ever separate them for that reason either. Also, if you find yourself in a situation where one of your rats has passed away and that leaves another rat by itself, you can't just leave them in that situation. They can become very, very depressed. You have to do what is best for that rat in that situation, whether it's getting more rats for them or rehoming them to someone that can also house them with other rats. So number 2 is similar to the first one, and that is that actually baby rats need same age company. This is something I see happening quite often, and I don't think a lot of people know that baby rats thrive and need attention and company from rats also the same age as them. So if you're a first time rat owner and you're going out to get rats, please don't buy a single baby by itself with the idea of, oh, I'll just get them a friend later down the line or a couple of weeks down the line. Please always buy your rats in at least pairs. If you go out and only buy or adopt one baby rat, this is going to be incredibly stressful for them. Coming home into a new environment is going to be so scary to do by themselves. Having a friend to do that with is incredibly important, and it can actually affect the bonding process with them. If they're terrified and by themselves, this is not going to help them bond with you either. Also, it's so important to make sure baby rats have same age company because it's very crucial for their social and mental development. Even if you have pre-existing rats at home that are 6 months old, a year old, even a couple of months older than the rats you're going to get, you still need to get them same age company. Especially if you're going to be introducing them to your other rats, introducing one baby rat by itself to your big group of adult rats is going to be incredibly scary for them, so please, if you're going out and getting rats, always get them in pairs or more. The third thing you should know before you go out and get rats is that where you actually get them from is so important and it does make a difference. Now, I will never recommend you go to a pet store, whether it's a chain pet store or a small local pet store, to source your rats. And I'm saying this with the rat's best interest, but also your best interest at heart too. I will always recommend either going to rescues or finding rats that need homes, or going to a reputable breeder to source your rats. Please don't support chain pet stores, especially because the practices behind that are very cruel. I do suggest you look into rodent mills. I do also have a video on the topic, but please don't support chain pet stores. It will make a difference with your experience with owning rats too. Unfortunately, on a regular basis, I get a lot of messages from people that have listened to my advice but still gone and got rats from a pet store, and they can't tame them, they're biting them, they're riddled with health issues like respiratory infections and tumours before the age of 1, and they're just really struggling with the whole experience, and this can really ruin your experience of owning rats. Of course, not every pet store rat is going to have health issues or behavioural issues. Some people do get incredibly lucky, but this doesn't mean it's necessarily still the right ethical thing to do, because you are funding for the parents of that rat to live in these horrible conditions, and your money is going directly towards breeding more rats to be put in the exact same position as them. So please look at more ethical places to get your rats. I'll leave some links in the description of where you can find good breeders and rescues. The fourth thing you should know and that you should be prepared for is that rats unfortunately have very short lifespans. There will be people that will tell you that their uncle's brother's sister's dog had a rat that lived to 5 years old. This just isn't physically possible. Most rats on average live about 2 years old, and this is just the reality of owning rats. They do have very short lifespans. Which brings me on to point number 5, which is that even though rats have a very short lifespan, they are actually a long-term commitment. So you might be watching this and thinking, great, rats don't live too long, I'm not going to have to commit too much time to them, but they are actually a long-term commitment. Due to them being social animals, you do have to plan ahead and have a rolling group. So what I mean by this is that a lot of rat owners, myself included, try to add younger rats to the group. So when our pre-existing rats get to about a year, 6 months old, we will start planning adding in new rats, just to make sure that group is continuously going, just in case some of the older rats start to pass away, you've still got a group of rats, as they are social animals. Preferably you want to try to do this before your rats start to pass away, just to make sure you're not left with a single rat, but it is definitely something you have to consider. Number 6 is that rats are not cheap and easy pets as much as you may think that. Rats and other small animals are considered pocket pets, but that definitely does not mean they're not going to take a big chunk of money out of your pocket. Rats need a lot of things. They need a big proper cage, which can be expensive. Also, they're so prone to a lot of health issues, which can rack up the vet bills very high. So by no means are they a cheap pet, and also I wouldn't say they're an easy pet either, because you have to deal with the social aspect of them, and they do actually require quite a lot of time. Number 7 is something to think about, and that's the fact that rats are very prone to health issues. If you're particularly an emotional person that gets very upset when your pet is sick or dies, rats are probably not the right pet for you, because this is something unfortunately that does happen quite often. Even when you get rats from a really good breeder, they still have a lot of health issues. Just to list a few of the most common health issues with rats, you've got respiratory infections, tumours like mammary tumours, pituitary tumours, you've got kidney issues, heart issues in later life. These are all things you have to mentally prepare for, and also physically, because these can also cost you quite a lot of money to treat, and having a pet you do have to take them to the vets. Rats are no different, they still deserve vet treatment, and you will have to think about providing that. As well as all of the physical issues, number 8 is that rats are very prone to having behavioural issues as well, and this is often due to where you get them from. Rats and pet stores again are not bred to have a good temperament, so they can have behavioural issues because of this, not just issues with being tame with you, but also issues with other rats as well. Again, this is something that can crop up with rats from breeders. I've experienced this myself, but it is something you do have to deal with, and most of the time this is going to be hormonal issues, so hormonal aggression towards you or other rats in the group. So hormonal aggression in rats is most common in males, but it can also be found in females as well, and this is a medical condition just like all of the others I mentioned, and this does need treatment. Most of the time, 95% of the time, neutering or spaying these rats will drastically decrease the hormones and make them much easier to house with other rats as they're meant to. So again, if you have a rat that has aggression either to you or to other rats, please take them to the vet. Try to discuss with your vet the options surrounding this, whether it's spaying or neutering, just to make sure they can live happily with other rats, because it's not going to be good for them to live in with all of this tension and aggression towards either you or other rats. On the topic of rats being aggressive and rats fighting, number 9 is that it's not always that serious. Rats do actually sometimes play fight. So this is something that is fairly normal, either they're play fighting or they're fighting to establish dominance. The general rule is as long as they're not injuring each other and drawing blood, they're not really posing much of a risk to each other, and you should just leave them to it. But rats do actually play fight as long as they're not exhibiting any signs of aggression, so puffing up their fur, hissing, teeth chattering, things like that, then there's really nothing to worry about. Number 10 is that rats need a lot of space. Please don't buy them just thinking you can shove them into a hamster cage or a starter cage or a tank especially. Please don't ever go out and think you can just put them into a tiny cage and that's going to do, because it really won't. Rats need big active cages, and I really recommend just buying these straight away and not bothering with starter cages. They really need room to run around on the base of the cage and also room to climb in the cage too. As well as this, rats do need outside of the cage time, so this is something to think about whether you can provide this or not. They do need a safe space to run around and play, whether it's in a secure playpen or you rat-proof the room and make it really secure. They do need that time outside of the cage, and I recommend giving them about an hour a day. Number 11 is that rats need enrichment. This is something that is often overlooked and it's super important because they are so intelligent, and this is something you need to make sure you can provide. So one of the 5 freedoms when it comes to animal welfare is the ability to express their natural behaviours, and this is something we need to make sure our rats can do in captivity. So there's a lot of behaviours rats will exhibit in the wild. These include things like digging, foraging, climbing, and we need to give our rats in our homes the ability to do these things too. So that's why I always recommend foraging toys and a loose bedding in the base, just to give them the ability to dig around and forage in this. If you're not able to provide them with bedding in the base of the cage, I do recommend at least giving them a nice big dig box, just so they can express their natural behaviours. It also means giving them plenty of things to climb on within the cage, but I do think the digging and the foraging part is the most important. Number 12, I hate to disappoint you, but not every rat is going to be a cuddly, friendly rat like you see on the internet. Again, this very much comes down to where you get your rats from. If you're going to a reptile breeder that breeds for friendly, cuddly rats, then chances are you're going to get one of those, but every rat has a different personality, every rat is an individual, and not every rat is going to like to be held and cuddled. The majority of the time, most rats are not going to enjoy this. So I really don't recommend going out and getting rats for the sole purpose of them sitting with you all the time and cuddling you, because you may be sorely disappointed. But if you put the time in and you spend the time with them, most rats can actually get to a point, especially as they get older, where they do actually like to spend time with you and sit with you. So if you're willing to put the time and effort in, you can achieve that, especially if you're getting your rats from a really good source. Number 13 is that male and female rats do tend to have different personalities. Obviously this does depend on the individual rat, but in general male rats tend to be a lot calmer, slower, and more prone to being cuddly. Females on the other hand are a bit more crazy, energetic, and probably a bit more entertaining than male rats. I'd say this is definitely something that comes into play as they get older, because all baby rats tend to be quite crazy. This is definitely something to consider and think about, whether you want male rats or female rats. There's really no right answer, it does depend which one is going to suit your lifestyle better. Number 14 is no, don't worry, their noses are not bleeding. This is actually a substance called porphyrin. This is just a red pigment that appears on their nose and their eyes. It's fairly common in small amounts and shouldn't normally be anything to worry about if there's not too much. They can sometimes get this when they first wake up, but if it's paired with other symptoms or there's an excessive amount of it, this could be a sign of stress or illness, and I do recommend taking it to the vet, especially if there is other symptoms with this. Number 15 is quite a common one, and that's that you might actually be allergic to rats. Now this could appear in the typical sense, so sneezing, coughing, your throat swelling up, that's the typical allergy symptoms, or you can actually be allergic to holding your rats and having little welts appear on your skin. Now I believe this is something that happens if you're allergic to the rat's urine. When they're climbing on you and scratching you with their nails, this can then irritate your skin. This is fairly common, I see a lot of people with this, but some people can have quite severe allergic reactions to this. If this is the case, I do recommend meeting rats before you buy them or adopt them, just to make sure you're not severely allergic to them. But if you have bought your rats and you find you're suddenly allergic, there's definitely things you can do to remedy this. So you can either just take over-the-counter allergy medication, or if you're handling your rats and you're allergic to them scratching you, you will just have to wear long sleeve, maybe even a turtleneck, just to make sure their scratches aren't irritating your skin, but it's definitely something you can work with. Number 16 is that you don't have to bathe them, so don't waste your money going out and buying any pet shampoos. Please just avoid bathing your rats at all. I do have a separate video on this which I'll leave in the iCards and the description, but in short, bathing your rats is incredibly stressful for them. It's not going to be a good experience for you or for the rats, and also it can strip the natural oils from their fur, which is not going to be good in the long term, so please don't think about bathing your rats when you get them, especially when you first get them. It's just not a good idea all around. Number 16 is that rats do this really weird thing called boggling. If you're not familiar with rats, this is going to be a very terrifying thing to witness, but I've really grown to love it. Basically, rats do this thing called bruxing, and that's when they're grinding their teeth, and the eye muscles are actually connected to their jaw muscles, and this causes the rat's eyes to pop out in weird, quick succession. It looks very, very strange, but this usually happens when the rat is content or happy or experiencing a strong emotion. So if you get rats and you see them doing this, don't panic, don't worry, it's just them boggling. They're not having a weird out-of-body experience, and it's something you'll probably come to love taking videos of because it is super weird. It's still really hilarious to me watching them do it. Number 18 is that the diet you feed your rats is so important. Please make sure you're researching before you get your rats what food you plan on feeding them, because it can directly affect their health. I do have a separate video in the iCards and the description talking more in depth about rat diet, but please just make sure you're getting them a nutritionally complete, balanced, high quality food to feed them. Number 19 is that rats do scent mark as they go. This is something that just comes naturally to them. This is part of their natural behaviour, and it is something you have to come to terms with. If this puts you off, then I don't suggest owning rats. So essentially what this means is rats just leave tiny droplets of pee wherever they go. It's not necessarily in large amounts. You may notice this if they walk over your hand or something, so this might actually be the thing that puts you off owning rats, but it is something to expect and be aware of. Number 20 is that rats are crepuscular, and this means they're mostly awake during dawn and dusk, and this is something that could actually affect your sleep schedule if you're sharing the same room with them. If you're a light sleeper and you're a bit prone to waking up with noise, their water bottle, their wheels, chewing things in the cage might actually keep you awake. Saying this though, don't let this put you off, because my rats often, whenever I come into the room during the day, are often awake trying to come and get attention. So they are active during the day as well, but mostly they are going to be active during dawn and dusk. And number 21, we're adding in an extra one for this video because this is super important. People will have divided opinions on this, but please do not let your rats interact with other small furries or any other animal for that matter. Now this is going to have divided opinions. Some people let their rats interact with their dogs and their cats. Personally, it's probably not something that I would recommend or do myself. Some people do this without any issues, but certainly don't allow your rats to interact with other small animals. If I had £1 for every time I was asked if my rats and mice interact, or if rats could also be housed with mice, I would be a lot richer than I am at the moment. No, they can't interact with other small animals. Rats are actually predators to things like mice. In the wild, if they come across a mouse, they will and can kill them, possibly even eat them if they want to, so no, do not ever risk putting them with other rodents like mice, hamsters, guinea pigs. Also don't put them with ferrets, just don't put them with any other small animal, please, it's just not worth it. Neither species is going to benefit from playtime with each other, and it's just going to be really stressful and ultimately dangerous for them. So that is it for the 21 things I think you should know before going out and getting rats. Please let me know in the comments what other kind of things you think people should know before purchasing or adopting rats. Hopefully this was helpful if you're considering getting them, and I hope I did this video a bit more justice this time. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to see any more animal related videos from me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!